Tomorrow morning, millions of seniors will reach for a slice of bread without thinking, butter it, toast it, load it with jam, and many of those everyday choices could be quietly nudging the heart, metabolism, and even the memory toward trouble. A large 2023 study of 87,000 adults found that the kind of grain foods people regularly ate was associated with major differences in heart disease risk and life expectancy. In that study, certain grain choices were linked with a roughly 44% lower risk of heart disease and about 6.8 years longer life for those choosing the right breads and grain products. That's why you need to know which breads to avoid and which ones to make part of your regular rotation. Before we go on, drop your country and name in the comments. Tell us what bread you eat most. Stay with me. By the end, you'll have a clear two-part checklist. 4 breads to stop eating and 5 breads to start buying instead, plus label rules, shopping tips, recipes, and simple swaps that work for life after 62. Why bread matters more after 62. As we age, your body's ability to handle sugar and starch changes. Glucose clearance slows, insulin sensitivity often declines, and low-grade chronic inflammation becomes more common. Those metabolic shifts mean the same white roll you loved in your 40s can cause higher blood sugar spikes and longer recovery times in your 60s and beyond. Over time, repeated spikes and the inflammation they fuel are linked in studies to higher rates of heart disease, diabetes, and even faster cognitive decline. That big 2023 cohort shows us the scale. Grain choices aren't just personal preference, they show up in population-level data. Other studies add detail. A 2022 paper in Diabetes Care linked refined grain consumption and certain bread patterns to higher diabetes risk and worse memory trajectories. A 2021 report in the Journal of Geriatric Cardiology raised concerns about potato-based breads and insulin resistance in older adults. We'll walk through the mechanics: glycemic impact, refined starches, added sugars and inflammatory fats. But always remember, these are observational findings showing association, not guaranteed cause and effect for every individual. Still, for older adults, the pattern is consistent enough to act on. Part A. Don't eat these 4 breads and what to do instead. 1. Sweet breads and pastries. What they are: cinnamon rolls, glazed brioche, sweetened breakfast loaves, danishes, and many packaged sweet or treat breads labeled as breakfast items. Why they're harmful for older adults? These are concentrated sources of refined flour and added sugar. That combination produces rapid blood glucose spikes, a high glycemic load, and repeated spikes over time increase risk for metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, and weight gain. Beyond sugar, many of these products contain inflammatory vegetable oils and emulsifiers that can stress digestion and prompt low-level inflammation. Evidence snapshot. Reviews in high-impact public health literature, including a Lancet review in 2023, highlight the links between sugary, refined grain products and cardiometabolic risk. For seniors who already face slower glucose clearance, the effect is amplified. Practical do's and don'ts. Don't make pastries a daily habit. If you love a morning sweet bite, try a one-time small portion and pair it with protein and fat. For example, a thin slice of banana bread with plain Greek yogurt or cottage cheese to blunt the sugar peak. Swap recipes. Use mashed banana or unsweetened applesauce for moisture and natural sweetness. Reduce added sugar by 30–50% and add nuts for texture and protein. Serving frequency guideline. Treat these as occasional treats. Think weekly or less, not everyday breakfast staples. Quick swap recipe idea: banana cinnamon quick loaf. Use mashed ripe bananas, a modest amount of honey or maple, whole grain flour, a handful of chopped walnuts and cinnamon. It keeps the flavor you love but drops the refined flour and added sugar shock. 2. Brown bread made from refined flour, the deceptive brown bread. What it is: Loaves that look brown, but are made primarily from refined white flour with coloring or molasses added. Labels that say wheat or multigrain can mislead. Why it's harmful. Color and marketing can hide the fact that the loaf lacks intact whole grains and fiber. Refined flour is quickly digested, raises blood sugar, and triggers insulin. For seniors, that means faster post-meal spikes and the cascade of metabolic stress that follows. Additionally, brown coloring often comes with added sweeteners or caramel coloring, which contribute little nutritionally. Evidence snapshot. A 2022 study in the British Journal of Nutrition examined commercial loaves and documented frequent mislabeling and differences in metabolic and inflammatory markers when people consumed refined versus true whole grain breads. The key takeaway: don't judge whole grain by color. Label reading rule you must follow. Always flip the loaf. The first ingredient must be either whole grain flour or whole wheat flour. If whole is not the first word, it's likely a refined flour product. Ignore claims like made with whole grains, unless whole grain is listed first. Practical swap. Choose loaves that literally say 100% whole grain or 100% whole wheat on the front and check the ingredient list. If you want the softer texture of a light brown loaf, look for sprouted grain or sprouted wheat options. They give tenderness and better nutrition without being refined. 3. White bread. What it is: traditional sandwich loaves, enriched white flour rolls, soft dinner rolls, and the classic fluffy supermarket sandwich bread. Why it's harmful. White bread has the bran and germ removed. That strips out most fiber, many vitamins, and healthy oils. The result is a high glycemic index food that spikes blood sugar quickly. Repeated consumption of high GI staples is associated in multiple studies with higher risk of type 2 diabetes and worse cognitive outcomes in some older cohorts. Evidence snapshot. A 2022 analysis published in Diabetes Care found associations between refined grain patterns and higher diabetes risk, and with declines in certain memory measures over time. For older adults who already face metabolic and cognitive vulnerabilities, frequent white bread consumption can be particularly problematic. What to do instead? Swap to denser, fiber-rich breads for daily sandwiches. Look for pumpernickel, sprouted grain, or 100% whole grain seeded loaves. Pair each sandwich with a source of protein: eggs, tuna, hummus, and healthy fat, avocado, olive oil, to slow absorption. If you miss the softness, toast a sturdier whole grain loaf lightly and add a smear of nut butter or ricotta to soften the texture. Serving frequency guideline: daily white bread, avoid. Make white bread an occasional comfort item, not your lunch staple. 4. Potato bread and heavy starch breads. What it is: breads with potato flour or mashed potato added for softness and moisture. These include some rolls, specialty sandwich loaves, and certain packaged soft breads. Why it's harmful. Potato starch is rapidly digestible and can markedly increase glycemic load. Some potato breads also contain added sugars or refined flours. For older adults, frequent consumption of starch-heavy breads is linked to insulin resistance and higher blood sugar variability. Evidence snapshot. A 2021 paper in the Journal of Geriatric Cardiology called Attention to Potato-Based Breads and Their Association with Insulin Resistance and Adverse Metabolic Markers in Older Adults. Practical alternatives. If you like the softness potatoes bring, choose whole grain recipes that use mashed sweet potato or pumpkin instead of white potato, paired with whole grain flours and seeds. Or make whole wheat or sprouted grain rolls at home, using a small amount of mashed root vegetable for tenderness rather than potato flour. Always check the ingredient list. If potato starch or potato flour is high on the ingredient list and whole grain is not first, pass. Serving frequency guideline: limit potato-heavy breads. If you do have them, pair them with protein and fiber immediately to blunt the spike. Short recap of the harms. These 4 bread types, sweet pastries, deceptive brown loaves made from refined flour, white bread, and potato-heavy breads, share the same underlying problem for older adults. They produce rapid blood sugar rises and over time promote inflammation and metabolic stress. Now that you know what to avoid, let's look at what to include instead. Part B, 5 breads you should include and why. Good bread. Number 5, pumpernickel. What it is. A dense, dark rye bread traditionally made from coarse or whole rye, often baked long and slowly. Why it helps. Pumpernickel's rye base and coarse grain structure produce a low glycemic response compared with refined wheat loaves. The denser crumb and higher fiber content slow digestion, leading to smaller post-meal glucose spikes and steadier energy. Evidence snapshot. A 2022 study in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that rye-based breads like pumpernickel were associated with reductions in insulin response and improvements in LDL cholesterol compared with refined white bread in controlled feeding settings. For seniors concerned about blood sugar and heart health, pumpernickel can be a strong daily choice. Serving suggestions. Try thin slices with smoked salmon and avocado, or toasted with a soft-boiled egg and a sprinkle of black pepper. Because it's dense, a little goes a long way. Storage and prep tips. Keep pumpernickel in a cool, dry place and freeze extra slices for quick toasting. Good bread. 4. Sprouted grain breads. What it is. Breads made from sprouted whole grains, wheat, spelt, quinoa, or others, where grains are soaked and allowed to sprout before milling. Why it helps. Sprouting increases the bioavailability of some vitamins and minerals, reduces anti-nutrients like phytic acid, and often lowers glycemic response compared with equivalent refined flours. Many sprouted breads are also softer and more digestible while still being nutrient-dense. Evidence snapshot. Glycemic Index Foundation data and European literature support lower glycemic indexes for sprouted grains, and some controlled studies in Germany and elsewhere have shown better folate and vitamin profiles in sprouted products. Practical tips. Brands like those following sprouted grain methods, examples mentioned in public sources include Ezekiel and some Silver Hills products. Treat brands as examples, not endorsements. Keep these loaves refrigerated or frozen. Buy whole loaves and freeze what you won't use in a week. Slice and toast from frozen. Serving suggestions. Pair sprouted grain toast with nut butter and a sprinkle of chia for a balance of carbs, protein, and omega-3s. Good bread. Number 3. Ezekiel-style sprouted grain plus legume bread. What it is. A sprouted whole grain loaf that also includes legumes, for example lentils, soybeans, producing a bread with a broader amino acid profile. Why it helps. The combination of sprouted grains and legumes yields a more complete protein than grain alone. For seniors, preserving muscle mass is crucial. Protein at meals supports muscle maintenance and recovery. Bread that contributes complete protein can be an easy way to add quality protein at breakfast or lunch. Evidence snapshot. A 2013 paper in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society discussed sprouted grain loaves, like Ezekiel, in the context of better nutrient profiles and potential benefits for older adults' nutrition. While bread alone won't replace dedicated protein sources, including a loaf with higher quality plant protein helps overall intake. Serving suggestions. Toast a slice and top with mashed avocado and an egg or a thick spread of hummus and cucumber. Keep portions sensible, 1-2 slices as part of a balanced plate. Storage tips. Ezekiel-style loaves are often sold refrigerated or frozen. Keep unopened in the fridge and freeze individual slices for convenience. Good bread. 2. 100% whole grain seeded breads. What it is. Loaves made entirely from whole grain flours with an abundance of seeds, flax, chia, pumpkin, sunflower, mixed into the dough and on top. Why it helps. Whole grains provide fiber and micronutrients. Seeds add healthy fats, particularly alpha-linolenic acid, a plant omega-3, extra fiber, and a dose of minerals and antioxidants. Together, they promote satiety, help blunt blood sugar responses, and contribute anti-inflammatory benefits that matter for heart and brain health. Evidence snapshot. A 2024 long-term study out of a European cardiac center reported that diets higher in whole-grain seeded products were associated with reduced mortality risk and better cardiometabolic markers over time. The seeded loaves' nutrient density and the healthy fats from seeds are key parts of that association. Practical shopping tip. Look for 100% whole grain on the front and verify the ingredient list. The seeds should be visible and listed in the ingredients. If the loaf lists enriched flour or sugar near the top, it's not the kind you want. Serving suggestions. Make an open-faced sandwich with smoked trout, arugula, and a squeeze of lemon, or use a slice as the base for a hearty tuna salad. Good bread. Rub 1. Authentic sourdough. What it is: bread fermented by a naturally occurring starter, wild yeast and lactic acid bacteria, rather than commercial baker's yeast alone. Why it helps. True sourdough fermentation partially predigests some starches and can lower the bread's glycemic response. The fermentation process also produces organic acids and bacterial byproducts that benefit gut digestion and may improve mineral absorption. For older adults, better digestion and a milder blood sugar response are both helpful. Evidence snapshot. A 2016 study in food microbiology showed that sourdough fermentation modifies the microbial and biochemical profile of bread in ways that can lower postprandial glucose rise and support gut microbial diversity. Authentic sourdough is not a cure-all, but it is a consistently better choice than refined white bread. How to find authentic sourdough? Look for breads labeled as sourdough that list a starter or fermented sourdough starter rather than vinegar or yeast plus acid. Bakery-sourced sourdough is typically better than mass-produced loaves that simply add sour flavor. Serving suggestions: lightly toast and top with ricotta and a drizzle of honey, or use for a grilled sandwich with lean turkey and roasted peppers. Pair with vegetables and protein to make a balanced meal. Practical toolkit. Label reading, shopping, storage, and swaps. Label reading: the flip the loaf rules you must memorize. 1. Flip the loaf and read ingredients. The first ingredient must be whole grain flour or whole wheat flour. If whole is not the first word, assume it's refined. 2. Watch for enriched or bleached. Those words mean refined flours with nutrients added back, not true whole grain nutrition. 3. Ignore color and brown can be added. Instead, look for 100% whole grain or 100% whole wheat. 4. Check sugar content. If a sandwich loaf has more than 4 to 5 grams of added sugar per slice, or more than 10 to 12 grams per typical serving, consider it high. 5. Seeds and nuts should be listed in the ingredient list, not just sprinkled on top. The higher up in the list, the more of them in the loaf. 6. For sprouted products, the label will often say sprouted or made from sprouted whole grains. These are usually refrigerated or frozen in stores. Shopping checklist to bring with you. A shopping list with 100% whole grain whole wheat, sprouted, pumpernickel, sourdough, and seeded. A cooler bag if you're buying refrigerated sprouted loaves. A mental rule: no more than 1 indulgent sweet pastry purchase per week for routine breakfasts. If you're comparing 2 loaves, choose the one with whole grain listed first, less added sugar, and visible seeds. Storage and prep tips. Freeze extra slices. Bread freezes well. Toast from frozen for best texture. For sprouted and Ezekiel-style loaves, keep them refrigerated unopened and freeze individual slices for daily convenience. Toasting increases flavor and can make denser breads more palatable if you miss the soft texture of white bread. Reheat leftovers in a low oven to restore crust and texture. Microwaves make bread gummy. Pairing advice: how to eat bread to protect your blood sugar and muscle. Always add a source of protein: eggs, cheese, smoked fish, hummus, and healthy fat, avocado, olive oil, nut butter, when you eat a slice as a meal. For snacks, pair bread with yogurt or cottage cheese rather than jam alone. For sandwiches, use vegetables liberally. They add fiber and slow digestion. 3 practical recipes and swaps you can use immediately. 1. Banana cinnamon whole grain quick loaf, lower sugar sweet option. Ingredients: 2 cups whole wheat flour, 1 TSP baking soda, 1 TSP baking powder, 1 TSP cinnamon, 2 ripe mashed bananas, 1 3-cup Greek yogurt, 1 4-cup honey or maple syrup, 1 4-cup olive oil, 2 eggs or flax eggs, 1 2-cup chopped walnuts. Steps: preheat to 350 degrees. Mix dry ingredients, whisk wet ingredients separately, combine gently, fold in walnuts. Bake 45–55 minutes. Slice and freeze extra. Serve thin slices with a spread of ricotta or nut butter for protein. 2. Seeded whole grain open face brunch. Ingredients: 2 slices 100% whole grain seeded bread, 1 to 4 cup cottage cheese or ricotta, 1 to 2 cup fresh berries or sliced tomato, 1 TBSP toasted sunflower seeds, drizzle olive oil, sprinkle black pepper. Steps: toast bread lightly. Spread cottage cheese, top with berries or tomatoes, seeds, oil, pepper. Eat with a side of scrambled eggs for added protein. 3. Quick sprouted grain tuna melt, seniors friendly. Ingredients: 1 can tuna in water, drained, 1 TBSP plain Greek yogurt or light mayo, diced celery, lemon juice, salt, pepper, 2 slices sprouted grain bread, 1 slice low-fat cheese. Steps: mix tuna, yogurt, celery, lemon. Place on bread, top with cheese, broil until cheese melts. Pair with a green salad. Mini explainers to help you decide in the store: glycemic index and glycemic load. Why they matter for seniors. Glycemic index, GI, rates how fast a carbohydrate raises blood sugar. Glycemic load, GL, adjusts GI for serving size, so it's more practical. Foods with high GI and GL produce quick blood sugar spikes. After 60–62, your body tends to recover more slowly from spikes. So choosing lower GI breads, pumpernickel, sourdough, sprouted grain, seeded whole grain, makes mornings gentler on the system. Inflammation and aging, the link to bread. Chronic, low-grade inflammation accumulates with age and is implicated in heart disease, joint pain, and cognitive decline. Diets heavy in refined carbohydrates and added sugars promote inflammation. Breads rich in fiber, seeds, and whole grains tend to have anti-inflammatory nutrients and help maintain a healthier metabolic profile. Gut microbiome basics and sourdough. The microbes in your gut influence digestion and immune balance. Sourdough's fermentation creates organic acids and preserves some prebiotic fibers that benefit gut microbes. While bread alone won't reconstruct the microbiome, choosing fermented sourdough over highly processed white bread supports better gut conditions over time. Sarcopenia, age-related muscle loss, and bread choices. Maintaining muscles requires adequate protein spaced across the day. Choosing breads that contribute protein, like Ezekiel-style sprouted breads, and pairing bread with protein-rich toppings helps preserve muscle mass. Combine bread choices with overall protein intake and resistance activity for best results. Q&A, quick answers to common viewer questions. Q. Is whole wheat pasta okay if I avoid white bread? A. Yes, whole wheat pasta is preferable to refined white pasta. The key is whole. Whole grain pasta has more fiber and a lower glycemic impact than refined pasta. Pair it with vegetables, olive oil, and protein to keep meals balanced. Q. What if I'm gluten-free? A. Many gluten-free breads are made with refined rice flour or starches and can be high glycemic. Look for gluten-free breads made from whole grain alternatives like buckwheat, quinoa, or sorghum with added seeds and fiber. Check the ingredient list and aim for fiber-rich options. Q. Can I still have my favorite bakery bread? A. Occasional bakery treats are fine. If you visit a bakery often, prioritize denser, whole grain, or sourdough options and keep pastries as a rare treat. Balance is key. Q. Are store multigrain loaves healthy? A. Multigrain simply means several grains are present. It does not guarantee whole grain. Flip the loaf and read ingredients. If whole grain is not first, the loaf may be mostly refined. Q. How quickly will I see benefits if I switch breads? A. You may notice steadier energy and fewer mid-morning sugar dips within days to weeks if you choose lower GI breads and pair them with protein. Longer-term benefits, like improved cholesterol patterns or metabolic markers, show up over months to years in population studies. Individual results vary, and these associations do not guarantee outcomes. A sample one-week bread swap challenge. Try this week-long plan to retrain your bread habits. Monday, Friday breakfasts: sprouted grain toast with Greek yogurt and berries, or seeded whole grain toast with nut butter and fruit. Weekend treat: one small pastry shared with a friend. Lunch: 2 slices of pumpernickel or sourdough sandwich with lean protein and plenty of greens. Freeze any extra slices and prep toppings in advance to make these choices easy. Common pitfalls and myth busters. Myth: brown bread is always whole grain. Not true. Color can be added. Always check ingredients. Myth: if bread is labeled low carb, it's healthy. Low carb doesn't guarantee nutrient density or fiber. Read ingredients and fiber content. Myth: I shouldn't eat any bread if I'm over 65. Bread can be a healthy part of a senior diet when you choose nutrient-dense, low GI varieties and pair them with protein and fats. Final recap: what to avoid and what to include. Avoid sweet pastries, deceptive brown loaves made from refined flour, white bread, and potato-heavy breads. These items share a high glycemic impact, and frequent inclusion in the diet is linked in studies to higher cardiometabolic risk, especially in older adults. Include pumpernickel, sprouted grain loaves, Ezekiel-style sprouted grain plus legume breads, 100% whole grain seeded loaves, and authentic sourdough. These choices are associated in the literature with lower post-meal glucose spikes, better nutrient profiles, and in some studies, better long-term outcomes. One final practical reminder and safety note: small, consistent swaps matter. Replacing a daily white sandwich loaf with a seeded whole grain or sprouted slice and pairing it with protein and healthy fat at meals can change your daily blood sugar pattern and reduce inflammatory stress over time. But this is not medical advice tailored to your situation. If you have diabetes, heart disease, are on blood-thinning medications, or have other health conditions, check with your clinician or dietitian before making major diet changes. If this was helpful, subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who still reaches for the same old loaf every morning. Tell us in the comments your country and name and what bread you eat most. We want to hear your favorite swap. Small changes can add up into real protection for your heart and brain as you age. Choose breads that feed your body, not spike it, and make the pantry work for your health.